Last spring, a 2019 Peugeot 2008 arrived at a garage near Leeds on the back of a recovery truck. The 1.2 PureTech engine was dead at 62,000 miles. The rubber timing belt that runs inside the engine oil had shredded itself, the debris had blocked the oil pickup, and the engine starved itself of oil at 70 miles an hour on the M62. The quote for a replacement engine came to more than £5,000 on a car worth about £9,000. However, that engine did not fail because of bad luck. It failed because of one habit the owner thought was completely harmless. So today, I'm walking you through the 15 most expensive mistakes Peugeot owners make, what each one actually costs in the real world, and the cheap habit that prevents every single one of them. Some of these will surprise you, and at least one of them you are probably doing right now. Mistake number 1. Never checking your oil level between services. I know it sounds like advice from your granddad, but on a modern Peugeot, this is the single cheapest habit with the single biggest payoff. PureTech petrol engines are known to use a bit of oil between services, especially past 40,000 miles, and plenty of owners drive 12 months and 10,000 miles without ever lifting the bonnet. On most cars, that's lazy. On a PureTech, it's dangerous, because the timing belt on that engine lives inside the oil. That oil doubles as the environment the belt has to survive in. Run the level low, and the oil that's left runs hotter, degrades faster, and chews through that belt years ahead of schedule. The bill at the far end of this mistake is a seized engine, and a replacement PureTech unit fitted will run you £4,000 to £6,000 at UK prices. The correct habit costs nothing. Check the dipstick once a month and before any long motorway trip, and keep a litre of the correct oil in the boot. 2 minutes once a month. That's the whole fix. But checking the level only helps if what's in there is the right stuff in the first place. Which brings us to a mistake people make while trying to do the right thing. Mistake number 2. Topping up or servicing with the wrong oil spec. Peugeot doesn't just ask for a viscosity like 0W30. It asks for a PSA approval standard. And on most modern models, that means B712290 or the newer B712312. Those letters matter more than the numbers. The additive chemistry in those approved oils is what the wet belt was engineered to live in. And on the diesels, the low ash formulation is what keeps the particulate filter from clogging early. Grab a generic 5W30 off a supermarket shelf because it was £7 cheaper, and you've changed the chemistry around a rubber belt that's already fighting for its life. Or you've started quietly loading your DPF with ash it can never burn off. The repair bills this feeds into are the biggest ones in this video. So the habit is simple. Before you buy oil, check the approval code on the back label against your handbook, and when a garage services the car, ask them to write the oil spec on the invoice. A proper spec oil costs maybe £10 more per service. The alternatives cost thousands. However, the wrong oil is not the fastest way to kill a Peugeot diesel. The fastest way is how you drive it, and mistake number 3 is practically a national pastime. Mistake number 3. Using a diesel Peugeot exclusively for short trips. If your 308 or 3008 Blue HDI does the school run, the supermarket, and nothing else, the diesel particulate filter never gets hot enough to regenerate. Regeneration needs sustained temperature, which means sustained speed, and a 2-mile trip with a cold engine achieves neither. The soot builds. The car tries to force regenerations that keep getting interrupted when you switch off. Unburnt fuel washes down into the sump, and eventually you get the warning light and limp mode. A forced regeneration at a garage is £100 to £150 if you catch it early. A replacement DPF, if you don't, is anywhere from £1,000 to £2,000 fitted. The correct habit is a proper run every few weeks, 30 to 40 minutes at motorway or dual carriageway speeds, letting the car get fully warm and stay there. And if your honest weekly mileage is 15 miles of town driving, the real fix is harsher. You bought the wrong fuel. Make your next Peugeot a petrol. And while we're on diesels, there's a warning some owners actively ignore until their car refuses to start on the driveway. Mistake number 4. Ignoring the AdBlue warnings. Every blue HDI diesel injects AdBlue into the exhaust to clean up emissions, and the car takes this system very seriously. So seriously that when the AdBlue warning appears, you get a countdown, and when it reaches 0, the car will legally and deliberately refuse to start. Owners see the first message, decide it's nagging, and carry on. But the countdown is often not about the fluid level at all. On these cars, it's frequently a fault, a crystallized injector, a tired NOx sensor, or the tank unit itself. And Peugeot dealers commonly fix that by replacing the complete AdBlue tank assembly at £1,000 or more. The correct habits are cheap. Top up yourself with proper ISO-certified AdBlue from a sealed container, not the dusty, half-open jug at the back of a forecourt shelf. And the moment a system fault message appears, get it diagnosed while the car still starts. A countdown is not a suggestion, it's a deadline with a recovery truck at the end of it. Mistake number 5. Letting the EGR valve sludge itself to death. The EGR valve recirculates exhaust gas back through the engine, and on a diesel, doing short, cold trips, it gets painted with a paste of soot and oil vapor until it sticks. Then you get rough idle, hesitation, limp mode, and an engine light that comes and goes just often enough to be ignored. On the Blue HDI engines, the valve is buried enough that labour is real money, so a replacement typically lands between £300 and £500. The fix overlaps with the DPF advice because the same warm, sustained driving that regenerates the filter also keeps the EGR passages hot and clear. Give the car a proper run regularly, and if the valve does start sticking, have it cleaned or replaced early, because a jammed EGR left long enough drags the intake and the DPF down with it, and then one £400 job becomes 3. Now, petrol owners, don't get comfortable, because mistake number 6 is aimed squarely at you and your shopping basket. Mistake number 6. Pouring cheap miracle additives into the tank. Every motor factor and supermarket sells £5 bottles promising to clean your engine, restore power, and improve economy. The awkward truth is that the only fuel system cleaner chemistry with solid evidence behind it on direct injection petrol engines is PEA, polyethyramine, and the cheap bottles mostly don't contain it. So owners of PureTech and THP engines tip in bargain additives for years, feel good about it, and clean nothing. Worse, that false security stops them paying for the maintenance that actually works. On a direct injection engine, no additive in the tank can touch carbon on the backs of the intake valves anyway, because fuel never washes over them. Money spent, problem untouched. The correct habit costs about the same. Run a tank of premium petrol now and then, use a genuinely PEA-based cleaner occasionally if you want the insurance, and put the rest of that additive budget towards more frequent oil changes, which do more for these engines than anything sold in a shiny bottle. Which brings us to the middle of this list, and the mistake that has destroyed more modern Peugeot engines than everything else in this video combined. Mistake number 7. Skipping or delaying the wet belt change. If you own a 1.0 or 1.2 PureTech built from 2013 onwards, please listen to this one twice. The timing belt on this engine runs inside the engine, bathed in oil. The design saves fuel and cuts noise, but over time, the oil attacks the rubber. The belt swells, softens, and sheds fragments, and those fragments sink into the sump and block the oil pickup strainer. From there, it's a chain reaction, low oil pressure, a rattling top end, and finally a belt that snaps or slips and lets pistons meet valves. Peugeot originally said the belt was fine for 10 years or 112,000 miles. Real-world failures forced that down to around 6 years, and plenty of UK specialists now say change it even earlier if the car does short trips. This became such a widespread problem across the UK and Europe that Stellantis, Peugeot's parent company, opened a compensation portal in 2025 for owners hit with wet belt repair bills and extended goodwill schemes across the earlier PureTech generations. Here is the maths that matters. A wet belt replacement at a good independent garage is £400 to £600, roughly 500 to 700 euros on the continent. A replacement engine is 10 times that. The correct habits: change the belt on age, not just mileage. Keep the invoice in the glove box, and if you ever see the low oil pressure warning, stop the car. Not at the next junction, immediately. But if you drive the older turbo petrol, the 1.6 THP, you have your own version of this problem, and it announces itself every cold morning. Mistake number 8. Ignoring the THP's cold start rattle. The 1.6 THP, the Prince engine Peugeot co-developed with BMW and Mini, went into the 207, the 208 GTI, the 308, the RCZ, and the 3008. It's a brilliant engine to drive, and it has two famous weaknesses. The first is a timing chain that stretches, and it tells you so with a rattle for a second or two on cold start. The sound owners on every Peugeot forum call the death rattle. Ignore it, and the stretched chain can jump teeth on the sprockets, at which point the pistons and valves try to occupy the same space, and you're into a £2,000 to £3,000 rebuild. Caught early, a timing chain kit fitted is £600 to £900. The second weakness is carbon buildup on the intake valves, because direct injection means fuel never rinses them clean. That costs a few £100s to walnut blast, and it transforms how the engine drives. The habit here is to use your ears. Rattle on startup means book the chain in that month, not that year, and shorten your oil change intervals, because clean oil is what keeps that chain and its tensioner alive. Mistake number 9. Believing the gearbox is sealed for life. If your Peugeot has the E88 automatic, the handbook will tell you the fluid never needs changing. Ask any independent transmission specialist what sealed for life really means, and you'll get the same wry answer. It means the life of the gearbox, and fresh fluid is precisely what decides how long that life is. The E88 is a genuinely good Aishin unit, but its fluid degrades like any other, especially in stop-start town driving or towing. And tired fluid shows up as jerky low-speed shifts and clunky down changes. A fluid service at a specialist is £200 to £300. A replacement or rebuilt gearbox is £3,000 and up, and on an older car, that's a write-off figure. The correct habit is a fluid change somewhere around every 40,000 to 60,000 miles, done by someone who knows the correct fill procedure, because these boxes are level checked at a specific temperature. That's the entire secret. There is no sealed for life. there is only serviced or saving up. If this video is saving you money, hit subscribe, because everything Peugeot covers everything Peugeot. Ownership, maintenance, and buying advice every single week. Now, mistake number 10, and this one ruins cars with a garden hose. Mistake number 10, pressure washing the engine bay. It feels like care, a gleaming engine bay ready to impress a buyer or just satisfy your inner perfectionist. But a modern Peugeot engine bay is a nest of multi-pin connectors, ignition coils, and control modules that were never designed to take a 100-bar jet at close range. Water forced into a connector doesn't cause a fault that day. It sits there, corrodes the pins, and 3 weeks later, you've got a misfire, a random warning light, or an electrical gremlin that comes and goes with the weather. Then you're paying diagnostic labour at £80 to £120 an hour, while a technician hunts a fault that a lance created, and intermittent electrical faults are the most expensive kind to find. If you want a tidy engine bay, the correct habit is a soft brush, a barely damp cloth, and patience, with the pressure washer kept for the wheels and arches where it belongs. However, while you're in that engine bay with your cloth, there's something you should be glancing at every single time, because mistake number 11 is invisible until it's catastrophic. Mistake number 11, ignoring slow coolant loss. Peugeot's petrol engines, both the THP and the PureTech, use plastic thermostat housings and plastic coolant fittings that get brittle with heat cycles and start to weep. Owners notice the level creeping down, top it up, and make it a routine instead of a repair. The problem is that a weep chooses its own moment to become a burst, usually on a motorway, and an aluminium engine that overheats even once can warp its head or fail its head gasket. That turns a £150 to £250 plastic housing replacement into a £1,500 plus top-end job, or, on a PureTech, into another dead engine story. The correct habit takes 5 seconds. Every time you open the bonnet, glance at the coolant level against the marks. If it has dropped and keeps dropping, don't top it up and hope. Find the leak, fix the plastic part, and treat any temperature warning like a fire alarm. Engine off straight away. And when you do top up coolant, what you pour in matters just as much, because mistake number 12 turns a £15 bottle into a £700 repair. Mistake number 12, using whatever coolant is on the shelf. Coolant isn't just coloured water, it's a specific corrosion package, and Peugeot specifies its own standard. Mix incompatible types, or run neat water for months after an emergency top-up, and the chemistry can react, clog the heater matrix, corrode the water pump, and coat the inside of the cooling system in sludge. A blocked heater matrix on a modern Peugeot is a dashboard out job on some models, and that's £500 to £900 of mostly labour for a part that costs less than a takeaway. The correct habit: keep a small bottle of the correct specification coolant at home. Use plain water only to limp to a garage in an emergency, and have the system flushed and refilled properly afterwards. Read the spec on the label the same way you now read the oil spec, because after mistake number 2, you absolutely do read the oil spec. Mistake number 13. Fitting a cheap battery to a stop-start car. Nearly every modern Peugeot has stop-start, and stop-start cars need an AGM or EFB battery built to survive constant restarts. When the original finally dies, a bargain garage or a well-meaning neighbour fits a standard £70 battery because it's half the price, and the trouble starts. The cheap battery isn't designed for the workload, so it fades within months. Stop-start stops working, and a modern Peugeot with weak voltage becomes a carnival of random warning lights. Because low voltage confuses every module on the car. On many recent models, the new battery also needs to be registered to the car's energy management system, or charging never behaves properly. Done right, a correct AGM battery fitted and coded is £200 to £350. Done wrong, it's £70 now, then the correct battery anyway a year later, plus diagnostic time chasing ghost faults. The correct habit is boring and effective. Replace like for like, insist on AGM where AGM came out, and have it coded on cars that need it. But the most common expensive mistake on this list isn't under the bonnet at all. It's on a piece of paper most owners never read past the first line. Mistake number 14. Ignoring MOT advisories. That advisory sheet is a mechanic legally telling you the future, and Peugeot owners should read it more carefully than most, because French cars earn their famous ride comfort with soft suspension bushes that wear as a matter of course. Rear beam bushes, anti-roll bar bushes, drop links, they appear as advisories years before they fail. Ignore them and the geometry drifts. The inside edges of your tyres scrub away, and you're buying tyres at £80 to £150 a corner to subsidise a £150 to £300 bush job you were warned about twice. Worn bushes also hammer the shock absorbers and ball joints around them, so the bill compounds the longer you wait. The correct habit is to treat the advisory sheet as next year's shopping list. Budget for it, do bushes in pairs, and get the alignment checked afterwards. Your tyres and next year's MOT tester will both notice the difference. Which leaves the most expensive mistake of all, and it's one you make before you even own the car. Mistake number 15. Buying a used Peugeot without checking its history. Everything in this video comes together right here. That temptingly cheap 208 or 2008 on a driveway or a forum listing is only cheap if the previous owner avoided the first 14 mistakes, and the evidence is in the paperwork. Before any money moves, run an HPI check. It's £10 to £20, and it catches outstanding finance, write-offs and mileage discrepancies. Then ask one question that separates the bargains from the traps. Where is the wet belt invoice? On a PureTech, no proof of a belt change on a car past 5 or 6 years old means you should price in £500 immediately or walk away, because you might be buying that Leeds engine from the start of this video. Check the service stamps, check the oil specs on the invoices, and check that AdBlue and DPF work has receipts behind it. 10 minutes of reading has saved more Peugeot owners more money than any tool in any garage. So, out of 15 mistakes, notice what almost every single one comes down to: oil, coolant, and attention. Modern Peugeots are better cars than their reputation suggests, but they are unforgiving of neglect. And the difference between a £500 year and a £5,000 year is usually a 2-minute check under the bonnet and a belt changed on time. Everything Peugeot is just getting started, so tell me in the comments which Peugeot you drive and which of these mistakes you've seen in the wild, because your stories shape what I cover next. If this saved you even one repair bill, subscribing is free and it helps this channel more than you know. Next time, we're digging deeper into the PureTech engine, what to check before you buy one, and how to make a good one last. Look after the oil, and your Peugeot will look after you.